Hey everyone, it's Adrienne from Math for Middles. So excited to be with you today. If you can see and hear me, will you let me know in the chat or by dropping me a message in the email if you're watching over on Math for Middles? Let me know that you can see me and hear me. And I'm super excited to get started with you. So, in just a few minutes, we'll start. But while we're waiting for more to join us, will you take a minute? And if you're on the YouTube side watching, drop in the chat where you're from. If you're watching on the website, I would love to hear from you. Send me a little email. Ask me any questions that you have about dyscalculia. I would love to answer those. So I'm going to check the chat here, make sure I've got everything. I've got my water ready to go. I'm super excited to be working with you today and teach you all the things. So I'm going to check in over here. Looks good. Great. Okay, so we'll just give it a few more minutes. We have one more minute until 10 o'clock. My plan today is to only keep you for about 1 hour. And then at the end, I'll take any questions that you have. So if you have a question that's really specific, that might take you a little while to type out, take a moment, fill out the email down below. There's a box that says ask a question. Fill that in. And then if you're on the YouTube side, you can ask your question in the chat. And today we have Sherry helping me with that. So she'll make sure that I see the questions and then I get to yours at the very end. But plan on for about an hour. And don't worry, there will be a recording so you can go back and watch this at any time. Okay, I'm going to check in with Sherry. Okay. Okay, great. All right, I'm getting messages that you all can see me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let me start by sharing my screen. I have a little presentation for you. And then at the end, again, I'll take your questions. Okay, so I've got the slides put up. You should be seeing a blue screen that says Dyscalculia. Know the signs. If you do not see that on the website, hit refresh on your page that you're viewing and then hit the play button again, and it should catch up to what we're doing live. Again, I am providing a recording of this so that you don't have to worry or fret about taking notes. You can always go back and watch it. Okay, so I'm Adrienne Meldrum. I'm the owner of Math for Middles. We provide multisensory math for families. And even though our name says middles, we actually work with a wide range of students, anywhere from elementary all the way up to college. When we started, however, we started with middle schoolers and then we've expanded from there. But all of us have been trained in multisensory math. We have several amazing team members who have either making math real training or have been trained by Marilyn Zecker, and we'll talk about that later as well. But my goal today is just to teach you about dyscalculia, what you're looking for, and help you understand how it's affecting your student. So let's get started with that. So you may have never heard of the word dyscalculia. And depending on where you live in the United States, it's either dyscalculia or dyscalculia, just depends on where you live. I'm not here to tell you whether you're right or wrong, but just say whatever makes your mouth not hurt the most. But you may have never heard of it before. But most likely, you may have heard of a math learning disability, which a lot of psychologists like to use instead of dyscalculia. So they'll name it out as math learning disabilities and then put in parentheses dyscalculia or dyscalculia. And dyscalculia refers to children with markedly poor skills at deploying basic computational processes used to solve equations. And that was founded by Haskell in 2000 in his research. And so we're going to look at the processes used for math and why it becomes such a problem for our students. And you may be wondering, how prevalent is it? Well, true dyscalculia affects only about 5% of school age children. And so in a classroom of 30 students, that would be about 1 to 2 students. Sometimes it's not that they have dyscalculia or dyscalculia, it's that they have dyslexia, which can affect math, or they have autism, which can affect math. But do I think it's a bad thing to have that label of dyscalculia? No, I think it's helpful actually. So it's okay for that. And we're going to talk more about that in depth here. Some other things parents might be wondering is there a cure? How quickly can we fix this? They just want to get in and fix this. The truth is, it's a brain wiring difference. It does not mean that your child will never be able to reason mathematically. That's not what it means at all. Rather, it means that they need to be taught in a way that works with how their brain is specifically wired. So, most likely, though, your child's in a classroom that values procedure and memorization, which can be super hard for them. Your child will discover that they actually do have a math brain when it's presented to them in a way that makes sense to them. So it really comes down to it's a brain wiring difference. No amount of therapy is ever going to cure your child's brain. They will always need the information presented slightly different, but they will have the ability to become math minded people. And I mentioned earlier that there's co-occurring conditions here. So let's go through some of those. The truth is that real dyscalculia all by itself is very rare, and I've only seen it a few times. But more often, it's a co-occurring condition that affects a student's ability to do math. So while they may have some qualities of dyscalculia, you may also have a mix of any of the following. So we have dyspraxia. Dyspraxia is like it affects your ability to write, use those fine motor skills. Those two might actually go together. They might have dyslexia or ADHD or a sensory processing disorder or autism, or they might have a mix of all of them, like several of them, all at the same time. And all of these things together affect their ability to do math, which is why I think it's okay to give a child a diagnosis of dyscalculia because it will help them get the services they need in a classroom, whether that's extra time or a bank of equations or a math fact sheet to help them process mathematically when they're in the classroom. And then sometimes it's math anxiety. So we have to tease these things out. If it's math anxiety, we have to work on that too. And it might be combined with all of those. But I know Cara on our team discovered once that she had a student who's only experiencing math anxiety. And once she taught the student how to manage anxiety, the problems with math went away. But sometimes, even if we have the tools to deal with anxiety, the other things, the co-occurring conditions like dyslexia or sensory processing disorder, are still going to make it hard to learn math. So just something to be aware of. So earlier I mentioned that there's certain processes that are needed for math. So I wanted to go over some of those with you today. First of all, we have language and verbal retrieval skills. Then we have to have really good working memory. We need to have good executive functioning skills. So that's like the ability to carry out a plan. And then you need to have good visual spatial skills as well. So let's dive in just a little bit deeper with all of them. And first, I'm going to go right to the language and verbal retrieval skills. And I think a lot of you are going to be able to relate to this. So let's do a little exercise. When you have a child with dyslexia, often they learn to read by tying a word to an image. A simple example would be pencil. Now, a pencil, to my mind, creates a very clear image, right? That's a pencil. I know what it looks like. It's fairly easy to learn the word because there's an image that ties to it. But students with dyslexia often skip over simple words like of, the, is. All of that is a problem, right? Because it doesn't have an image. I can't think of an image that goes with of. And because the word's tiny, it's easy for a student to just skip over it. But this is a huge problem when it comes to math, because if I'm thinking of taking 1/2 of 4, I might be lost because I don't understand what of means in this situation. What is it asking me to do? I don't even know, right? And that's an important point to make. So really you have to show them what of means. I'm taking part of it. I'm taking part of 4. In fact, I'm taking half of the 4, right? So that kind of has to be explicitly taught. So if you have a child with dyslexia, you can see why This makes it tricky to learn math because little insignificant words in the English language to them become extremely important in math. Another example I thought of this morning is the word is. Think about is in the English language. That's kind of like, well, there's really no image for that. But in math, is means equal, right? We can have 16 is half of 8 plus x. And the word is there means equal. And so that's a really important thing for us to recognize that if you have dyslexia, math has to be taught a little bit differently to you because of the language component. It's a language heavy topic. The other thing that affects students is their working memory skills. So, working memory kind of boils down to this. This was from Dr. Belak and Ramirez. Um, Dr. Belak and her team studied the brain through MRI imaging and found that math facts are actually held in the working memory section of the brain, which is fascinating. So, I wanted to teach you a little bit about that working memory part of the brain. With working memory, we have what's called the inner eye. Visual information is used here. Many of our students have very strong visual memory, and you'll find them looking up at the sky or down at the ground. And the inner eye is used for mental math and understanding magnitude, which is like how big or how small a number is. This is their inner eye at work. Then we have what's called the inner voice, which is what is used for finding and using the math facts and names for numbers and writing dictated numbers. So, for example, the child may be thinking of a number, but struggles to write it down from that inner voice, and they might have some errors from that. Then the final piece of that is we have what's called executive functioning skills. So, the ability to carry out the plan. This is what's used to sustain focus, push distractions out, and regulate emotions, among a myriad of other things. And I wanted to show you how complex executive functioning can get and how it really, really affects math. So let's look at that. So if I ask a child to take this math homework home, there's about 12 steps that have to occur. So I wanted to show you each of the steps. So the first one is they have to focus, clearly understand the homework given by the teacher. Does the student even understand the expectation? The second thing they have to do is record it. Write the assignment accurately in a planner or on a piece of paper. And you have to ask yourself, does this student rely solely on memory? Most likely they think they can. The third thing is then they have to remember when they get home to check the planner for the homework. And my guess is most of your kids don't even look. Then the fourth thing they have to do is actually do the work, initiate the task, which is really hard. I know I avoid things, right? That's task initiation, and that's hard. Can the student start something independently? Then from there, we have the fifth step, which is memory. Well, then the student has to recall, well, how do you do the work? That was earlier in the day. I don't really remember how the teacher solved the problem. Can they access the memory from that? From there, they have to sustain some attention. They have to maintain the focus and finish the homework. And does your student struggle to complete the homework? Most likely, I'm guessing you're nodding your head, yes, my child struggles with these things. Then, after that, they have to check to make sure it's complete. Sometimes students will forget that there's a backside, or they'll forget to even look and make sure they kind of did it right or fix any errors. Another big component to this is labeling. Did they remember to even put their name on the piece of paper? That happens a lot too. Then they have to organize it. They got to put it in their binder, put it in a safe place so they can remember where it was. And I know this is really hard for a lot of my students because their backpack looks like a bomb has exploded and there's crumpled up papers down below. So, did the student even put it in a place where they could find it again? Most likely not. Then they get to school and they have to find it. They have to locate it. And it's like, "Oh no, I lost it." But really it was in the backpack the whole time. And then it has to travel to the school and then it has to get turned in. Does the teacher have like a clear place for these students to turn in the work? Do they have to pass it up to the front? There are a lot of things that go into turning in that homework assignment. And so you can see how executive function plays a big part in your student being able to reason mathematically. Last year, I had a student with ADHD and poor executive functioning skills, and he was great at math, but it was not showing up in his grades at school because of executive functioning. So, what he needed was support from me to help him do these 12 things to get the work turned in. But now let's talk about kind of what are the signs of dyscalculia. Dyscalculia, what do you need to look for? One thing that happens a lot is finger counting. And if you see your child using their fingers to count a lot, you need to pay attention to, are they miscounting when they're using their fingers? Do they know they have 5 fingers on one hand and 5 on the other? Do they move their fingers but they count completely inaccurate? So maybe they tap one finger twice and say the number twice and it messes up all of that. That's called one-to-one correspondence. Do they count the dots on a domino and dice? Like they just feel like they can't trust that domino. I'm not sure that it's a 6, so they have to count it every single time one by one. Another thing to watch for is, do they subvocalize? Do they talk under their breath as they work? Are they whisper talking? And not that that's a bad thing, but you need to kind of listen to, what are they saying? Is this whisper talk mostly counting? That's a big red flag. We do want our students to subvocalize, to kind of whisper talk as they're working. But if it's mostly counting, that tells us a lot about the student and where they're at and how their skills are developing. And we want to help them use that whisper talking for doing higher level thinking. And then we have visualizing. Do they look up in the air? Are they looking down at the ground? Pay attention to that. I've got students that do that all the time. Some of them, their mind's eye is up in the air. For others, it's down on the ground. So watch for that. If they're doing that, they are a very strong visual processor. And math might be hard because sometimes their visual images are incorrect, or we have trouble transferring it to the paper. Then you need to look at time in a couple different ways. um, can they tell the days of the week or the months? Do they get confused about time in general? Do they struggle with time management even? Really grasping what 15 minutes feels like or half an hour? Can they tell time on an analog clock, so a clock with hands? That's a really important thing to pay attention to. And if they are having issues with that, there are lots of things we can do to help that student start doing those things. And that is a life skill, to be able to tell time, to be able to manage your time. Then the other thing we want to look at is, do they understand magnitude? Do they understand quantity, place value, big numbers, fractional parts? A lot of students would look at this number and they're not exactly sure how to read it. And that is a big sign for a math struggle, dyscalculia. We have to pay attention to these things. Place value is huge. So you might be wondering, well, what kinds of methods actually help? Well, for our students, we have to use what's called multisensory math. And multisensory math is what we use every day at Math for Middles. If you know a Making Math Real tutor, that's what they're using. If you've ever heard of someone using Mortensen Math, that's what they're using. And the method behind that is that we are doing an approach called CRA. Now, CRA is an acronym for C, concrete. Think of things that you can touch. R is for things that are representational, things you can draw. And then A is for abstract. That's just the numbers. And unfortunately, this is where the bulk of teachers spend their time instructing, especially in middle and high school. But the CRA approach is appropriate for all learners and has a place in secondary education. And it's the basis of good teaching. It's just good practice, guys. And so we use this method with our students with a lot of review. Our lesson plan is really specific and based on the research of Dr. Steves. And when I say Steves, it has 2 E's in it if you want to look her up. She's in retirement now, but she did write a book. However, the book's a little bit hard to read in a Nook device. But her approach goes it goes along with OG in that it has a lot of review in it. And when I first encountered the lesson plan, I actually was really hesitant because I wasn't sure that students needed that much review. But once I gave in and actually committed to using the method, my students started making a ton of progress. And that's what we're looking for. Our students need a lot of review because their brain, it's struggling with working memory. So it's going to delete anything that's not getting used on a regular basis. And so we need to be using our mathematical minds a lot and reviewing things we've learned a lot for us to keep it and use it. Okay, so I'm getting ready to wrap up here. I wanted to give you time to ask me a question. So you're going to ask your question either using the question box down below this video or send me a message on the chat inside of YouTube if you're over there. And if you're not sure where that is, right below the video, there's a little button that says ask a question and type in your name, your email address, and your question. And I'm sorry there's a little bit of math there, but I figure you guys are cool with that, right? Send that in, and Sherry will be watching for that. And if we miss it somehow, don't worry, I will respond to your message. If you're on the YouTube side, there's a little spot that's called Top Chat. And you need to just comment right there, and I will answer your questions. So before we wrap up, I wanted to show you a few resources that you could use to help your student. So we have this book called The Dyscalculia Solution. I think it's a fairly affordable resource for parents. It's about $45. And it's going to cover topics from basic number sense to about sixth grade fractions. And then after that, I have not yet found a resource that I really like for parents for secondary math. The other one is Overcoming Difficulties with Number. This is from Ronit Bird. Um, Personally, I like the Dyscalculia solution a lot, but Overcoming Difficulties with Number is very game based, which is fantastic. Games are great because they're going to help your student make new synapses in their brain faster than just repetition alone. So, if we can gamify the learning, that's going to help them long term. So, those are two book resources. If you're wondering about curriculum, we have Math UC. Math UC is great. It comes with manipulatives that you can use. There's also one out of the UK that's called Maths No Problem, and you can buy all the way into high school, actually. If you're a homeschooler, that's a great option. You should check that out. Another one that I really like is Bridges. However, it's not available to a parent to purchase. This is only within a school that you could buy Bridges. However, if you do a quick search for Bridges, several PDFs for like a home connection PDF will show up, and use those with your student. They are fantastic. And then there's another curriculum out there called CPM. CPM's great. Again, they prefer to work with schools, so you're going to have a harder time getting a hold of that curriculum, but do a search on their website. They have a lot of free stuff that you can take advantage of. Okay, then you might be wondering, well, gosh, where could I get some training about this? So I'm going to share a few places that you could get some training here in the US. First of all, you could work with Marilyn Zecker, who trained me. She does it through asdec.org. And Marilyn is awesome. She's been teaching math for a long time. She is a certified language therapist. So she has a lot of amazing ability to tie the skills that are needed for reading into math. It's fantastic. And she's a big believer that the language that you use to teach math is really important, and also the speed at which you speak. If we are talking too fast at our students, it does not give them enough time to process what's being said and to fully understand it. So I love Marilyn Zecker. She's fantastic. Then we have Making Math Real, and this is with David. He is in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, his classes are very expensive. He does not have anything online. Maryland does have online training. Making Math Real does not. You have to fly to the Bay Area, stay there for a couple weeks at a time, and keep coming back. So, that kind of investment, you're looking at thousands of dollars to make that happen. Then there's Wooden Math. He has a website with a few resources on it. The website's a little bit hard to navigate, but there's some good stuff in there. And then same story with Mortensen Math. I know a lot of people really like Mortensen Math. However, I will warn you, the website's a little bit, I don't want to be rude, but kind of archaic. It's just a lot of hyperlinks. It's difficult to know like where to start over there. But those are some training experiences that you could go check out and learn a little bit more. But I wanted to show you how effective multisensory math is. So at first glance, this graph might not seem super impressive to you, but I, as the main teacher, I'm crazy excited about it. So this is an assessment that we do, and I wanted to show you, I'm going to pull out the little pointer here. I wanted to show you that this is the first assessment, this blue one, and the black one is the second one that we did about 9 months later. And notice this student was only able to tap out about fourth grade. And then here in this column, he maxed out. This is the maximum amount a student can earn. Let me go back. I'm sorry, I clicked too hard. This is the maximum amount a student can earn in this area, and he maxed out that. He has a really good number sense and understanding. Same with this. Place value, when I first started working with him, he didn't understand place value above 10,000 or decimals, and he maxed that out as well in the second assessment. And then we have ordinal numbers, that kind of stuff, adding, subtracting. He maxed those out each time. But then look at this multiplication area. He completely jumped up. And that is something that was achieved in just a little bit of review every single time I saw him. Same with division. And then his fractional knowledge has jumped up and he's really close to maxing it out too. I looked at what he missed this time, and I think it was just because it had been a little too long since we reviewed something. So I'm definitely going back and I'm going to fix that. I wanted to point out that there's no blue bar here on number theory. He didn't even know anything about number theory, but now he does. He's completely maxed it out. Same with the decimal operations, maxed that out. Percentage, here it dropped just a little bit. And my guess is he may have just forgotten something. And then notice over here, now he's had the ability to be tested in understanding integers. And he is doing awesome. He's really close to maxing that out as well. And that was a new topic to him that he had just learned about 2 weeks prior. So that's the power of multisensory math. Before, he was completely stuck. He was using math you see with his mom, and they were stuck and they couldn't get past multiplication. Then he came to me, and just by using the multisensory method and Dr. Steve's lesson plan, the student became unstuck. And now he's consistently telling and sharing with me that math is his favorite subject, that he just loves coming. So that's the power of multisensory math. It's not a quick fix. It's definitely a long term strategy, long term game. We're not going to be able to fix your child. Like I said, it's never about fixing them, it's a brain wiring difference. But you can see how when it's presented in a way that makes sense to them, they can progress and they do it relatively fast. So this student went from performing on about a third grade level to now about midway through sixth grade, which is awesome. And he has a goal to go to high school, and I am certain we will get him ready for that. So, the other thing I wanted to share with you is that you can definitely go check out more of these stories, case studies of students that have had good experiences with multisensory math. This is probably one of the most joyful pages, in my opinion. I really enjoy reading them and seeing the stories. And so head over to this link, mathformiddles.com/case dash study. And you're going to see stories here, and we add new ones all the time. We also update them with data and try to bring those in too, so that you can kind of see the progress. But each of them have either images for you to look at or videos so you can see how the student's progressing. And I'm certain that you're going to feel like you're identifying a lot with what we talk about over there. Oh my goodness. So that was a lot of heaviness, a lot of information. I felt like we needed a little bit of humor. So we're going to wrap it up with this funny cartoon that I asked Adrian Hedger to make for me of Hedger Humor. And if you're not following Adrian over at Hedger Humor, I highly recommend you do. She just gets being a parent like nobody's business. And every time she releases a new cartoon, I find myself laughing and giggling. But I thought I would just read through it really quick with you. This is 6 ways to get out of math homework according to kids. And again, this goes back to that task initiation. Your students feeling frustrated with math and they want to avoid it. And so these are some of their tactics around it. I found many of my students do these, even my own children. They get really chatty, right? Oh my gosh, I didn't tell you what happened last Monday. Or they suddenly remember a chore. I have to deep clean my bathroom right now. Or they encounter a user error. I raced too hard and I ripped the paper. Oh, lots of big tears over that one. I've experienced that one several times. Or they become completely famished. I'm so hungry. I'm so thirsty. Or suddenly they just care a lot about their personal hygiene. Oh, I forgot to take a shower, but yet the kid's been stinky for several days. Or they slowly disappear. Why are you sliding off your chair? Stop sliding. Right? It's totally relatable and I love that. So, I hope that was helpful to you. I'm sure you have lots of questions and Sherry's been sending them to me. So, I'm going to turn this off in just a minute. I'm going to read through your questions really quick and then I'll answer your questions. Okay. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to answer those questions. I'm going to stop screen sharing so you can see my face. Oh, good. You can see me. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading questions. So don't worry about that. The very first question came from Jennifer. She has a 10th grade boy. I think I'm understanding that correctly. And he was diagnosed with dyscalculia and dyslexia. And she doesn't know where to begin and what assistive technology would be most helpful. Okay. In 10th grade, one thing I'll warn you about is you don't want to just hand your child a calculator. Now, I know that that's what the school probably has chosen to do, just give them a calculator. However, it just makes it worse. I've had several students that was their accommodation was a calculator, and it causes them to be basically they have terrible number sense. So they would type in all these numbers on the calculator, but they have no idea why the answer is what it is and they couldn't calculate simple numbers or they were still counting the dots on the dice. They didn't understand that 5 is 5. Sorry, that kind of blurred. There we go. So that you have to be careful with that. I don't think it's a good idea to have a calculator all the time for simple computation. Like if they can add 3 plus 7, I want them to do that. I don't want them to plug that into the calculator. Let's use the calculator for things like finding sine and cosine or tangent, like some of the more difficult stuff. But I don't think that is a good accommodation for a student. Now, he's older and this is a new diagnosis. As far as technology goes, you don't want to have too much tech because that can also cause overwhelm. But some helpful things that he could get permission to use would be like an iPad or a laptop to take notes. That way he can make him highly visual because my guess is he's a highly visual kid. And so if he can make images to match whatever he's thinking about to help him remember a topic, a subject, a vocabulary, anything like that would be really good. So an example of that was I had a student that was learning about proper and improper fractions. And the image we picked for proper was a lady drinking tea with her pinky up. That's very proper. For improper, we picked I don't know if you've ever seen this, but like the Mountain Dew cartoon that's really old and it says Mountain Dew will tickle your innards and he's like holding a jug and he's very improper, like backwoods kind of guy. And that was really helpful for him. And then when he was working and he's getting lost in his own thoughts, all I would have to say is it'll tickle your innards and he oh okay, it's an improper fraction, and he knows what to do. Sometimes he was struggling to recall that information. So having that kind of assistive technology would be great, just having some sort of way to do the notes visually and have that be okay with the school. But that might be a little tricky. It depends on the school. Some schools are kicking that out and going back to pen and paper. And then as far as what else you can do for him, I actually think if he just is now getting diagnosed in 10th grade, doing multisensory math with a trained professional is going to give you the best luck here. it's it's time is of the essence. I would get him some help. Doesn't have to be with us. You could reach out and look for an educational therapist that specializes in math. They would understand. Some dyslexia reading tutors will do math. However, some of them max out about 6th grade. But look for someone that understands your son's diagnosis and understands multisensory, and they're going to be able to help him move forward. And don't be surprised if they want to go backfill some of those subjects. I had a student that was a 9th grader that had this diagnosis. It was new to her. We actually went back and taught things like time and money and place value, but I make sure to honor the age of the student. It was not a babyish experience. She understood it and she was making the connections faster because she's older. So don't worry about that feeling babyish. It's an appropriate thing to go backwards, fill in those holes, and then move forward. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, ask more. I would love to talk more. Send me an email at hello@mathformiddles.com. Okay, Jeff wants to know, what is the youngest age that dyscalculia can be diagnosed? I have a 7-year-old showing symptoms that you spoke of. Yes. So dyscalculia, as far as like research and diagnosing, is still in its infancy. So I wouldn't say that there's a hardcore age that you can say, yes, that kid has dyscalculia. You might actually get some pushback from people doing the diagnosing. You will definitely get it from the school. The school is going to tell you, no, give it a few years, your child's just young for their age or whatever. Baloney. That is my opinion. I would go outside of the school. I would get what's called an educational evaluation by a psychologist. And what they're going to look for is they'll look for dyslexia, they will look for dyscalculia, they will look for ADHD, and any other kind of thing that is affecting learning and get a diagnosis. And my guess is, I know that our assessment goes that young. So we could find an issue with a child that young because we are looking at the ability to recognize 5 on the dice pattern. We're looking at their counting ability. We're looking at, can they start at 7 and count by threes going forward? Can they count backwards? That's stuff that a little 7-year-old can do. So my belief is, yes, you could get a diagnosis. Are you going to get support from the school? Not really. Not really. And so I think going private would be probably your best bet. How much do those tests cost? Well, they can cost wide ranges, but I've seen anywhere from $800 to $3,000. Just depends. Some of them have really long wait lists as well. So I wouldn't wait. I would try to go get my child on the list to get assessed. So check that out. If you have more questions, Jeff, please send me an email. I can point you in more directions, and maybe even send you a few links of where to look. Okay, Dana wants to know if you have practical examples of what any of these curriculums look like when in use. Yeah, yeah, I do. Dana, maybe what I'll do is send you a few links so you can kind of see. I don't have any of the books sitting right here by me. Otherwise, I would flip them open and show you. They're in another room. But I would definitely do that. Dina, I will send that out to everyone who came to the webinar. I'll send you some links so you can see how it looks. And if I have time, I'll try to pull one up here. YouTube's a little finicky about me showing video footage. They might mark this as infringing on copyright, so I don't want the video to get taken down, but I can send links out so that you can look at those and check that out. Cynthia wants to know how to sign up for your summer tutoring and how to deal with a school district that will not use multisensory math. Okay, for summer tutoring, you go to the summer tutoring page. And I'm going to be honest, Sherry and I are baffled. I don't know why we've been having so many issues with buttons and links breaking lately, but we have. So if it's If it's being fussy for you, let us know. It's something easy that we can fix again and hopefully won't break, but we can help you get there. So, with that, you just click on the links of what class you want to join and then check out, and then it will send you an email telling you what the next steps are. So, this summer, we have a class that's all about math facts, and it's appropriate for kids of any age. Doesn't matter what age they are. We know that math facts are a problem for everybody. And so, the way that we teach that class is slightly different than any other class. It will require a little bit of effort on your part to interact with your kid, but we do it in a fun game-like way. Your child needs that human interaction that a computer can't give them. So just FYI about that. It is a little more parent interactive, but they also come to class online in a setting sort of like this, and they interact with other kids and practice the math facts, and we help them, do better with that. And we'll be covering multi-digit multiplication and division. So as and all the little facts as well. Then other classes we have a 6th grade boot camp one where we touch a little bit on math facts, multiplication and division, but the lion's share of it is on fractions, and that is a huge skill your child's got to have before they go to 6th grade. If they had a really bumpy 6th grade year, they should come to this class. Then we have a pre-algebra one. This is for kids who are in 7th, 8th grade. If they had a bumpy year, they should come. If they're going into 7th grade, that would be a great selection for them as well. But if fractions are still hard for them, I would put them in the fractions class over pre-algebra, if that helps you decide. Then we have an algebra class. And so this is for kids who are going into high school, and that will be run by our educational therapist, Cara Scanlon, and Raj, our other multisensory tutor. And it's a little bit later in the day, but it's a fantastic class. I'm really excited about that one. I'm planning on putting my own son in it. I think it's going to be really helpful for him. So those are kind of how the classes work. Then they're about 6 weeks long, and you meet with your tutor once a week in a group setting. And then there is work that is assigned in between. Sometimes it's watching a video, sometimes it's doing a short worksheet, but you'll see that it's very different because the worksheets don't have tons of problems all over them. It's maybe 4 problems per page. We want to make it not overwhelming for our students. We don't think that tons of repetition is the way to go. Repetition inside the lesson, yes, but independently, no, because sometimes they're practicing an error. We don't want that. So we keep the assignments short and easy to do. If you're traveling during that time and you miss a session, that's okay. You can watch the recording later. So if you have more questions about summer, let me know. Like I said, sometimes those buttons have been totally tricky. And then your next question, Cynthia, about how to deal with a school district that refuses to do multisensory. That is a tough one. It's really, really hard. I would actually maybe talk to, I don't know if your child's in a special ed math class or in a regular math class. We've actually been successful getting a few districts to admit they don't have the skills to teach that student, and they allow us to come in during school hours and teach the student. So I know that sounds crazy, but we've actually been able to do that several times. You'd be surprised that school districts sometimes, because they are avoiding being sued or whatever with the parent, they find that doing something like that is better. If they continue to just be total pills about it, we actually do have an IEP advocate offering here at Math for Middles. So you could sign up to have someone help you with that. Sometimes with that, it just takes having a letter written, I'm going to sue, whatever, or hiring a lawyer and having it be ruled that the school pays for multisensory math therapy, basically. So there's several different ways you could go about that. But I would always encourage you, Cynthia, to be kind, be patient. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. If you're ever wanting to send an email and you're worried that maybe you're being too mama bear, just I would be happy to look over it and help you kind of take some of the emotion out of it, because it causes teachers and administrators to become very defensive. And we want to create an atmosphere where everyone's working together as a team. But you'd be surprised over time. Sometimes it just takes you advocating enough and then providing some of the solutions. Tell them about Marilyn Zecker's training. Tell them that it's about $800. And if you could have one teacher go through that, that would make me happy. Then they can start using it with my student. something like that. Obviously, they probably wouldn't want to send anyone to do Making Math Real because of the cost, but Marilyn Zecker is affordable. So, or they could buy the Math UC curriculum that comes with some training. So, there's lots of different options. Sometimes they just don't know what's available. So, helping the school see the solution and be a team player is huge. And if you have the means to offer to pay for it so the school doesn't have to, offer that. Whatever you can do to get them to be on your side is the best advice I can give you. But let me know if you're interested in that IEP advocate role. We have some great people on our team. Cara is fantastic with that. So is Ruth. Ruth has a lot of background with writing IEPs and advocating, and she knows the law inside and out. It's pretty impressive. Okay, and then we have the fifth question. Melissa wants to know, are there resources available for tutoring in Minnesota? Our daughter has dyslexia and ADHD. I don't know about Minnesota specifically, but what we do here at Math for Middles is we do everything online. We believe in our core that students should have the ability to take advantage of this kind of therapy and training regardless of where they live. For example, we've had students that live in teeny tiny mountain towns that work with us and other kids that work in big cities. But the reason why they do it online is because there's nothing like this in their community. So that's what we offer here at Math for Middles is it's all online. And we do free trials so you can see and experience what it's like so that your child kind of knows what they're getting involved with. But our students love working online because they're at home, they're comfortable. You'll see kitty cats sitting in laps or their dog or they're in their pajamas. They're totally relaxed because they're in a place that's safe for them. So online tutoring is fantastic. I know that as a parent, that might sound like, how does that work? This is supposed to be multisensory, right? How that works is we mail materials to you. We have digital manipulatives. We can make it work, and it does work, and we do all of it online. That example that I showed you with all of those case studies, those are all kids that are working online. We don't do any in-person tutoring. So it is effective and kids prefer it. And then the parents become such fans because they don't have to drive their kid anywhere else. So I would say reach out to us. There's a few other people that might do it online, but I don't know very many off the top of my head. Most people do it in person. There's a clump of people in California that do it in person, but as far as Minnesota, I don't know anyone personally that does it. But we do it all online. So if you'd like to reach out, Cynthia, and try a free trial, let me know. I'll send you a link and you can just pick a spot in my schedule. And that's about a half-hour meeting. You can bring your child with you and have them experience it, or you can choose not to have your child come and we'll schedule another one if you decide you want to move forward. So we're really flexible and willing to help you with whatever. Okay, I'm going to double check any other questions. I'm going to look in the chat. Nothing else in the chat. I think I answered everyone's questions. If I didn't, please send me an email at hello@mathformiddles.com. I would be happy to answer your question specifically. If you are part of a support group or Facebook group or some association where math isn't really covered a whole lot, I would be happy to just volunteer, give you my time, and do a presentation similar to this. So if that's something you're interested in, send me an email. I would love to help with that. My April is pretty booked. I might have some time in May. But other than that, I think that's everything that we have. Thank you for joining me. Again, I'm so glad you're here. There will be a recording. I will send it out later, along with those links so that you can see what online tutoring looks like and what multisensory method looks like. I will show you all of those too. Bye, you guys. Have a really good day. We'll see you soon.